Have you been experiencing internal financial struggles triggered by economic concerns? Are you feeling capped at your current income level and can't seem to realize your financial potential? Energy healer Gene Border has created an emotional freedom technique, or EFT, tapping protocol to help calm the inner voice that keeps you stressed. Claim your free copy at geneborder.com/vow and say goodbye to those financial blockages. Welcome to another episode of the Focused Practical Dreamer's Journey podcast, Energy Work to Better Your Business, hosted by energy healer Gene Border. It's not just about dreaming, it's about making those dreams a practical reality. Subscribe to us via your favorite network by visiting our website at www.focusedpracticaldreamer.com. Now, get ready. Your journey to success starts here.
Hello, everyone. It's your host, Gene Border, with another episode of the Focused Practical Dreamer's Journey podcast, where we talk everything business with a focus on energy, mindset, psychology, and how those impact not only your personal life, but also your business decisions. I have a special guest with me here today, Michael Cohen. But before we get to Michael, I want to remind everyone that there is a free resource for you down below if you're having any tension in your body or in your world concerning money, your financial situation, the economic situation of the area you live in, whatever. Grab the free resource below. It's a little bit of a tapping exercise for you, just a protocol that will help you calm down your nervous system. So you're creating your financial future from a place of calm rather than a place of fear or reaction. And I just did 2 tapping rounds for you. You can use that as an example while you go through the protocols in the PDF. Or if you know how to do it, just go for it. geneborder.com/vow, VOW, for those of you who aren't looking but just listening in. And I hope that provides value for you. And I'd be curious to see what kind of results you get from it. And now on with the show. This is Michael Cohen. Hi, Michael. How are you?
Hi. Before we get started, I just want to say I love tapping. I did my tapping training certification 10 years ago, I want to say, 15 at the Mega Institute. And it's been a part of my life ever since. So I love that you're promoting that.
And it's so easy and it costs you nothing.
It works. Yeah, it works. Stressful days, you start to feel it. I'm always like anxious, or tapping the different areas, a little agita. I'm a big fan of tapping. It works. It helps. And I do it in coaching when I have clients that are struggling with talking about things that they're working through. I'll be like, let's tap it out and then see where we go. Sometimes we'll be like, that you need to see a therapist here. And sometimes we just tap it out and we're good to go.
If nothing else, it calms you down in the moment. Right?
Yeah.
The more you do it, the deeper you can go. And I do tell people, if you get into something that feels traumatic for you, tap on calming, right? I'm afraid, whatever it is, but don't get deep into it if you're not comfortable, if you're not trained in it. Work with a master practitioner, or a therapist might be appropriate, right? But for just general everyday, you get nervous in traffic, tap, right?
Yeah.
If you get angry in traffic, tap. You don't need the whole road rage thing going.
I agree.
Yeah.
You and I are on the same page there. I agree. Yeah.
Cool. So tell us a little bit about you. Give us some of your background.
So, I don't know, I guess I'm like most, the average American, grew up in America in the 80s, was an 80s kid who graduated high school and went off to college, when college was really affordable and it wasn't hard to go to college. And I went to Rutgers University. I got a master's in psychology, a master's in sociology, and a minor in business. And I just finished up the program because 15 years ago, if you went to Rutgers and you had a 3.25 GPA and you graduate, you can go 1 extra year and get a master's. So I had 2 degrees, and so I got 2 masters. And I was contemplating going to get my PhD in psychology. And then it was September and it was a fall and tragedy struck, and I lost some friends, and I kind of didn't really know what to do with my life. And I kind of just fell into this sort of like period of like depression. And my parents, for, their good nature, wanting me to live a good life, encouraged me to go get a job. I found myself eventually moving into New York City for some reason, and I ended up working in corporate real estate, finance, development, acquisition for the first 12 years of my life. I wasn't the smartest kid. I was working alongside people with, law degrees, MBAs from Harvard, Yale, but I was the hardest worker. If you worked 12, I worked 14. If you worked 14, I worked 20. If you worked 20 hours, I didn't sleep for 2 days. And I did all this by self-medicating. So at 32 years old, I had 3 prescriptions to Adderall and 2 prescriptions to Xanax and 1 prescription for Vicodin for my back. And I, on paper, looked like I was living this great life, and I seemed to be thriving, but behind closed doors, I was addicted to pills and I was addicted to painkillers. No one knew this, right? This was before the opiate pandemic, so there wasn't a lot of crackdown on getting prescriptions. And a good friend of mine came up to me and said that if she knew me really well, and she was like, if you keep going this way, you're either going to find yourself in a worse off position or you're going to die of a heart attack. And for whatever reason, it was this sort of like that dark night of the soul where I had this crossroad and I looked in the mirror and I didn't recognize the person looking back. I weighed 250 pounds. I smoked 2 packs of cigarettes a day. I was doing all these pharmaceuticals. And at the same time, New York City brought out the worst of my nature. Like every individual has both like the light and the dark, we say, like good qualities and the bad qualities. We all have both sides. No one sits there and says, I'm a perfect being. So it brought out my demons, like the parts of me that are highly competitive, highly aggressive, bad behavior. And I was just living this very toxic, materialistic life. And so I just like woke up one day and was like, I'm going to go on this like soul quest. And at 32 years old, I walked away from a job where I was making $350,000 a year plus two semi-annual bonuses, a beautiful apartment overlooking the park, friends. I walked away from it all and was like, I'm going to go figure out my life. And I found myself almost contemplating becoming a monk. Shaved my head. I was wearing Hindu robes. I was living in a ashram. And that was going to be my life for a while until I met my wife. And from meeting my wife, that led to what I do now, which is a whole different story that I know you're going to ask me next. So I'm not going to get into it.
Okay, so let's just go there.
So, I was, like I said, I was like living this monastic life. I had a shaved head. I was reading scriptures. I was praying all day. And along that journey, I met my wife, and I was, so I left this like vision of a monastic life, and I moved to New Jersey, where I live now. And I was teaching yoga and trying to make a living teaching yoga. And I would drive all over the country, or not over the country, all over the state of New Jersey. I was averaging 50,000 miles a year driving in 2 counties teaching yoga. So I'd get up at 6 a.m. I would teach yoga, get in my car, go to another place, teach yoga, go to another place, teach yoga, and come home. And I was exhausted. And I looked at myself and my wife, and I was like, this isn't working. I'm now 37, 38. We're not making enough money to get ahead. I love being a yoga teacher. I think the industry is changing. When I first started teaching yoga, I was being paid $100 to teach a yoga class. Now I'm being paid $40 a yoga class. And there's just too much competition. I need to figure out something to do that's not as physical. And I was like, I have these master's degrees, one in psychology and one sociology. What can I do with it? So I did all this research. What can I do? And it was like, be a therapist. Well, that's 3 years. I'm married. I can't go through 3 years of like licensing to become a therapist. So I decided to become a life coach, right? Because what I like is helping people. And so I did my first certification, then it's me. So I will do like 3 or 4 certifications before I'm ready because I have slight imposter syndrome. So I recognize that. And then I was starting to build this coaching business. Pre-pandemic, no one was interested in it. I would talk to people left and right about doing coaching online. I'd get a client. It would take me 3 sessions to teach them about Zoom half the time, what Zoom is, how to do coaching on Zoom. And right before the pandemic in 2020, I went to my wife and I was like, I have $20,000 put aside, saved. I have 6 privates I like for yoga. And I have these 2 different studios I actually like teaching yoga out, and everything else I can't stand. I want to quit running around the state of New Jersey, and I want to spend all my time focusing on trying to build this online platform. And my wife said in February, go for it. March, pandemic hit, everything shut down. Perfect timing. And then it was just off to the races. And I just started building this online platform and getting clients. And now I have this thriving online coaching business that I on average, I see between 40 and 50 clients, depending on the time of the year, right? I would like to see less clients and charge more eventually. But right now I see between 40 and 50 clients. I charge about 100, 150 an hour. And that's what I do now. And I love it. I don't go anywhere. I work full time from home. I don't have a corporate overlord, but I do work from like 8 in the morning, 8:30 in the morning till like 7:30 at night, 5 days a week minimum. That's the downside. I'm working on fixing it, but I'm not there yet.
You said so many things that I want to touch on if I can remember them. But one of them really stuck out to me. You said you spent all this time working on something that people weren't interested in. And that's such a common trap to fall into, right? We have to figure out, yes, we love this. We want everyone to love it. But right now, that's not what they're looking for. And so at the time of the pandemic, everyone started looking for what you were offering.
I knew there was a market for it. So it wasn't that I knew there was, so it was a combination of 2 things. One, I didn't really have a lot of time to build the business, right? If I was lucky, I had 2 hours in a day, right? Maybe 3 to try to reach out to clients. And, that's the hardest part when you're building a life coaching business. The hardest part of a life coaching business is you have this good nature. Like anybody who wants to be a life coach isn't a bad person. They have big hearts. When I did my first coaching certification, I'm the only one who's still doing this. No one else is still doing it. So I graduated with a class of like 50 people. It was in person. I was one of and out of the 50 people, no one's doing it anymore. And then as I was trying to build this coaching business over and running around teaching yoga, because it's very much a lot of people are like, I'm a yoga teacher and an Ayurvedic nutritionist. I'm a yoga teacher and a life coach. Out of everybody I was running around with in my mid-30s, I'm the only one still doing this, right? It's a hard business to build because if you have a full-time job and you're working 8 hours a day and you have responsibilities like a family, you don't have a lot of time. And so you have to be able to figure out a way to carve out some time to be able to make sales calls to get clients. And this is where a lot of coaches struggle with. When the pandemic hit and everything got shut down, it wasn't that people weren't interested in coaching. They just didn't understand what an online platform was. I knew that it was what people really wanted because there were so many benefits to it. It just took me a long time to convince people. And that's, I guess, where you say luck happens, because luck happens when, hard work meets opportunity. So I got lucky. And on one sense I did, but on another sense, I was spending 6 years getting ready for that moment. And I didn't quit my job and jump all in and fail. When I started my coaching business, I kept trying different things to try to make it work. I was trying to build an Instagram channel. That didn't work. I was trying to start a podcast to get clients. That wasn't working. I was trying to go to like local chambers events and network. That wasn't working. I was trying to market towards yoga teachers. That wasn't working. And I kept throwing things against the wall. And then I basically just kind of started doing all this research online with Google. And I was like, where are people going to look for life coaches? Like, what are they seeing online? And I kept seeing in these three searches kept showing up: BetterHelp, Thumbtack, and Bark. BetterHelp, Thumbtack, and Bark. BetterHelp, Thumbtack, and Bark. I was like, what are these? And so I looked on BetterHelp and I was like, okay, that's for licensed therapists. I'm not a part of that. Then I looked on Thumbtack and I tried Thumbtack. It wasn't bad. I just wasn't really getting clients. And then I tried Bark, and that's where I really started to get clients. Like I started to get the clients that were looking for online coaching. That listing service is what gave me the ability to build the business. What sustained the business is when I'm working with a client, I always try to like provide more for them. I try to give them extra time if needed. I always give them handouts, workshops. I always kind of will do mini sessions in between. And because I'm always really trying to deliver value for the clients, those clients over the last 6 or 7 years have become my marketers. And that's what's really helped to build it. And that's the second part of the component. The Zoom part was it was the luck part. That was just the luck part. It happens. Sometimes it happens.
For me, I liked Skype, but unlike you, I set up my business from the beginning to be all remote.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want overhead. I didn't want to have to deal with traffic. I didn't want to have to find a place that people would come to. And the remote part, you have to learn. You have to take the classes. You have to sit in on the workshops. You have to do the stuff to get comfortable with what is available. Now, technology changes so quickly that's an irritant for me because you just learn it and you have the muscle memory and they move where something is on the screen. And you're like, seriously, just it worked, leave it, but everything has to evolve and improve and all that stuff. But
Skype missed an opportunity. I don't know what, like that was the thing. Like what were they thinking? What were they thinking? Like they had the corner and they just lost it, and everyone just uses Zoom. It's just the norm.
I still use Skype with some clients because they like that. But like for this, we're recording on Zoom.
Right.
They really stepped up during the pandemic and exploded their capabilities and made it affordable for people who need that resource.
Right.
And it's just available and it's reliable. That's a huge deal. It's reliable.
I agree. Yeah.
But anyway, I set up my business as remote from the onset, and that has allowed me to have clients all over the world, right? I have worked with only a handful of people in my city. Everybody else is on the East Coast or the West Coast or in Europe or in Australia, whatever it is, right? The only constraints are the time difference issues that you have to keep working through to get it straight in your head. Now, I have my calendar set up that people come in and they just pick a time, but it automatically converts to their time. So even that, you take away the sticky points that would interfere with someone scheduling with you, right?
Well, no, I'm like you use Acuity, I use Acuity. I think I'm a big fan of Acuity.
Yep.
I think there's some newer mousetraps that work a little bit better, but I don't have the time to go through and retool everything. Acuity works. I'm fine with it. I don't like working with people in my town because just like you, just like anybody else, we all have our imperfections. We all have our bad days and our bad moments. And when I'm working with clients, like a lot of times I tell every client, the things that I'm coaching you on, and either I am dealing with myself right now, or I have dealt with in the past, or I will deal with in the future. But a lot of times people, they have a sense of, it's like social implicit theory. Like they look at their life coach and they think their life coach has a halo around them, who has all the answers, that has a great marriage, has a great job, everything about their lives are amazing. And it creates a sense of awkwardness, so that when you're like walking down the street or you're out to dinner and you're not in your best state, it gets a little uncomfortable when you run into somebody that you're guiding through their own personal growth journey. So I prefer people nowhere near me because of that. So I can live my own life and not worry about judgment or not being the ideal version all the time that people expect from people that do what we do for a living.
And the other side to that is there's this expectation of privacy. So anything they tell me is like in a bubble, right? No one else needs to know. No one needs to know they come to me. No one needs to know what they talk to me about. And so if they never run into me, they never have to have that uncomfortable feeling of, what's she going to say? Somebody's going to know that I know her. That kind of thing, right? So just for privacy purposes, I find it useful for people not to run into me in certain situations.
It's so much better.
Met me in a social situation and everybody knows that, that's a different feel than someone who came to me for a private matter that they need to work through or want to work through, and they don't want anybody else to know.
No, I agree with you. And you know, the other advantage of like, how do I put it? It's like, there are pluses and minuses from running an online business. And one of the things I do battle with in coaching all the time is I get a lot of clients that are like, I want to start my own business. I want to start my own business. I'm okay with someone wanting to start their own business, but it's got to be for the right reasons. And it cannot be follow your passions and you'll never work a day in your life, or the only way for you to be wealthy in America is for you to own your own business. If those are the two reasons, when I have a client say that, I always kind of give them the, what are you talking about, Willis? Like I give them the, it doesn't sound like that's a smart decision for me, because most millionaires, most self-made millionaires work for a corporation and they become wealthy through the company they're working for. Or if they're not working for a corporation, they have a 9-to-5 job. Their input, meaning the money that they receive, is greater than output, and they're very good at saving and investing. Most entrepreneurs struggle. They struggle with making a good living. They struggle with paying their bills. They struggle with cash flow. That doesn't mean that it's great. It's just like, if you're listening to this podcast, you don't always have to start out your own business. You can be an entrepreneur and have a 9-to-5 job. You can be an entrepreneur and be a stay-at-home parent. You could be an entrepreneur and not start a business, is what I'm trying to say. There are many different ways to approach what we do and have the ability to grow and acquire and live a great life.
I'm going to add to that. There's some advice that some really famous people give all the time to people who have not yet started a business, and that is go all in, quit your job, focus on your business. I'm like, oh my gosh, who are you talking about? You have no clue what you're saying, right? If you have no money coming in, all you have is tension. And if you're trying to grow a business from a place of tension, you're not going to grow a great business. You're going to take clients you don't want. You're going to do anything to chase bringing money in just to pay your bills. Not even to live a great life, but just to pay your bills, right? Not great advice usually, unless you've got a huge nest egg that can support you and make you feel this illusion of safety while you're creating your passion business.
I agree with you. That's like one of the dumbest things that I ever hear. There are certain things that I push back on when I'm working with clients. One is, if you want to start a business, quit your job or you're never going to be successful. I think that is the worst advice you can ever get. Yeah, it sells books, it sells downloads on YouTube. That's the first one, right? I did that the first time around. I quit my job because I thought I was going to be this hugely successful yoga teacher. I mean, like, I knew all the Sanskrit terms. I was physically in shape. I'm an attractive man. I can do a handstand in the middle of the room. I'm going to blow it up and be hugely successful. And I struggled. And I had to drive all over the country, state of New Jersey to make a living. And if I just kept my steady job and taught yoga at night and on the weekends in the beginning, I wouldn't have had to been trapped in this like survival mode. And it would have been a lot easier for me to be successful as a yoga teacher. So I hate that advice. And I agree with you, right? First, you have to have proof of concept. You have to earn a living. And that's the first thing. The second advice I constantly push back on, and this is what I was telling you before, was like in the 10 years of me being on podcasts, I've never had anybody push back on this, right? We all live a version of quiet desperation, right? That was Shakespeare, right? Like what that means is we all live in a world where at every point in our lives, we have struggles that we're going through. Right? We are never, ever going to have it all. We might have a good career and we're struggling in our marriage, or we have a great marriage, but we're struggling with our relationship with our kids, or we have a great relationship with our kids, but we're struggling in our health, or if we're healthy, but we're having financial issues, or we're financially well off, but our parents are sick, right? We are always living in this state of constantly trying to find balance between different areas of our lives. Whether you're an entrepreneur or you have a 9-to-5 job or you're a stay-at-home parent, there's always things that are out of balance. But we're constantly told through the weapons of mass distraction, social media, podcast, books, that you can have it all, right? You can have it all. You can have this 10x life. Right? You should have a 10x life. So you should have the best career that you wake up every day super excited and it's amazing. And you're just like doing good in this world while making a lot of money, while like having a great dynamic at your office and everything's amazing. You should have the best car. You should have the biggest house on the block. You should have the most dynamic marriage. You should have the best kids, the best friends, the best community, the best of everything. And you're told that all the time. Right. And so then you sit there and you're like, man, I have a decent job. I make a decent living. I'm not wealthy. Maybe I'm a plumber. Maybe I'm an accountant. Maybe I'm a lawyer. Maybe I'm a life coach or a podcaster. Make a decent living. My marriage is good. There's some things that need to be worked on, but somehow I'm failing because I'm told that everything's supposed to be great. And this is the thing I'm constantly battling against. Because you can't, you're always going to have things to work on. And that is the thing that I think most people struggle with, is that concept. And in 10 years, not one podcast interview was ever pushed back on me on that and said, you know what, I disagree with you. Until last week, when someone was like, no, you can have it all. And I think we as individuals have to recognize that we can have a good life. Right? Some of us will make $50,000 a year. Some of us will make $50 million a year. Some of us will be married. Some of us will be single. Some of us will have kids. Some of us won't. Some of us will have good relationships with other parents. Some of us won't. We can still have a good life based on what those circumstances are for us. And then ask ourselves, like, okay, this is the cards that have been dealt. This is the life I'm living right now. What is the area of my life that needs to be my primary focus? Maybe it needs to be health. I need to lose some weight. I woke up one day and I'm borderline obese and I'm pre-diabetic, or I have type 2 diabetes. Or I woke up tomorrow and I have credit card debt that I didn't realize that this sort of creeped in. And the next thing I know, I have like $10,000 in credit card debt or more. So I had to ask myself, what is the primary focus that I need to be right now? What is the thing that I need to put my energy into? Maybe it's starting a business, right? Once I understand that primary focus that I need to focus on, then I can say, how is that going to affect the other areas of my life? So I don't sacrifice my mental, physical, and emotional well-being, my relationship with my partner, if I have a partner, my family, my friends, my community. And if my primary focus isn't my career, how is it going to affect my career? Then once I understand that, then I can begin to set realistic expectations of what I can and cannot do, right? And that's the thing I constantly have to work on with clients. It's setting that understanding, because what happens is they're trying to do too much, they're trying to do everything, or they're so overwhelmed they don't do anything.
I think it's important to remember that you can have the ideal moment, regardless of your situation, regardless of how out of balance your world is, which is, I think, a lot of what you were just in the way I took what you just said was there's this balance wheel, right? And if anything is out of balance, it impacts you inside, right? You want to have the best relationship with your family, and that can be a moment by moment thing. It's not an all the time perfect thing, but you can have that ideal moment with your family and you can hold on to that. And same thing with your finances. They're not always going to be perfect. Sometimes they're going to be really great. And other times it's, oh, I got this huge tax bill that I wasn't expecting. And now I've got to recoup and I've got to rebalance everything to account for this expenditure that was not, on my horizon when I was doing my planning for the year, when I thought I was going to take this really cool vacation, and now maybe I've got to put that on hold for a year, right? So it's not that you can have everything all the time, but you can have those moments.
Right. Yeah. And that's the hardest thing I think people struggle with right now. It's like that sense of like everything has to be like at a level 10 or we're struggling. It's like you're going to have at different times different things. It's like if you want to train for a marathon, that's great. I think that's wonderful to train for a marathon. But you're going to have to then say no to other things, right? And if you have and if you want to get ahead in your career or you want to start a business, right? You're not going to work 8 hours a day. You're going to work a minimum of 10 to 12 hours. Goal isn't to always stay at that level, right? That's the thing I was talking about in the beginning. Like my goal, and I talked to my wife about it, is I want to be in the next 2 years. I want to get to a place where my schedule is 8:30, 9 in the morning until about 6 p.m. And I want to double my income, right? That's the next goal. So so it's like, you don't stay where you're at, but if you want to get ahead and you have a career and you're working 10, 12 hours a day and you want to train for a marathon, then you're going to have other areas of life that aren't going to get that focus that much. And that might put some like strain on your relationship or time with your family. That might put some strain on your ability to do other things in your life. But when that passes, then you can sit there and reassess, right? My teacher used to always say, find the space between the breath. Like this was a thing that was always said to me. And I remember like I would constantly be like, pardon my language, but are they thinking about, right? What? And it took me years I would be like, I don't understand the space between my breath. I inhale and exhale, inhale and exhale. And finally, I was on this retreat in Shivananda Ashram, which is an ashram in upstate New York. It's been around since, I think, the 50s. And I was at this meditation retreat and I was doing what's called, I think the Sanskrit word is apana. It's like silence. You take a vow of silence from anywhere from 5 days to 30 days. And you spend your day in meditation and contemplation. We were in this big, giant auditorium, old school gymnasium where you had the 50 million ceiling fans twirling to keep the gymnasium cool. It's 85, 95 degrees in the summertime. And I found myself, for whatever reason, every day under this one fan that kept kind of getting out of its rotation and making noise. If you've ever been on a silent meditation retreat and you are trying to sit still for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. It can be torture if you're losing that state of flow, that state of like contemplation. And so I'd be in meditation, and I kept hearing the noises, and I'd get down, I'd be all aggravated. Then I'd get up and storm away, sit down the next day, meditation, get disturbed, get up all aggravated. Finally, the third day, I finally sat there and I was like, oh, I get it. That noise, that is the space between the breath. It's where I have those moments of contemplation in between the different events in my life, right? Most people, they wake up, they turn on the news, or they turn on the TV, or they turn on a podcast. Some of it's sometimes positive, like personal growth podcasts like this. Yay. Sometimes it's true crime. Okay. And sometimes it's like political controversy. Everyone's the enemy and the other side is the devil, right? Right. Then, if you have kids, you get kids ready for work. If you don't have kids, maybe you go to the gym, then you get in your car and you're listening to stuff on your way to work. Then you get to work, you work till 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock at night. Then you get back in your car and listen to another podcast, or maybe you listen to music. You come home, you turn on the TV, you cook dinner, you talk to everybody, blah, 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 and then you go to bed. You do that every day. And then on the weekend, you're running around. And there's no pause. There's no sense of like, where do I need to make those course corrections? Those are the things, what we were talking about, where you have to find the balance, is where you have to find the space between the breath. You have to take the moments either daily. I recommend the most if you are willing. Monthly at a minimum. Semi-annually, I get it. Where you have that question of, am I living a good life? Where are the opportunities for growth right now? And what are the things that I need to reconnect to with gratitude that I'm not paying attention to? Those are the things where then you can then look at those imbalances we were talking about to find out how to reconnect or recalibrate what is important right now for you.
One of the processes that I go back to a lot with clients is become aware of what you want, not what you don't want, but what you do want, right? And that can be hard. And then focus on it to get clarity on how that will work for you. And then what strategic action do you need to take to get you there, right?
Yeah.
So you mentioned a lot of that earlier, is figuring out what people want, figuring out how you're going to get the word out to these people, figuring out how many certifications do you really need to be qualified to teach stuff. That's a hard one for people, right?
Right.
You want to make sure that you're good enough, that other people externally think you're good enough, when chances are you were good enough in the beginning, but increasing your skills is not a bad thing, right?
I think it's easy to get the skills today. I think anybody who wants to do what I do for a living, or anybody who wants to be a life coach, I think nowadays there's so many more resources that are available for you. I mean, you can use AI to say, I need to coach a client on this particular topic that they're struggling with. Please give me the salient details that I need to go over with the individual. Then you can go and come up with your own program, and you can use AI for a lot of stuff, which is great. Still got to make it your own. You can't just kind of like read a script off of AI. But it's a lot easier to get that content, like to know what to say. That's the plus. The hardest thing, I think, when it comes to what we do, what individuals really struggle with is, and I ask clients about this all the time, right? Especially when someone says they want to start a coaching business, but whatever it is, I always say, what is your definition of success, right? I'll get this a lot of times when people will say, because I know like part of the topics here is like starting a business. And they'll say, I want to make $1 million. Like, oh, okay.
That's a funny one for me. That's just hilarious. I hear that so often. They don't even know what that feels like, what that means, how to define that.
And I always say, well, why do you need $1 million? Oh, I want to create passive income, residual income. And I say, all right, let me get this straight. You're 35 years old. Okay. Let's say tomorrow you made $1 million, right? And your business then generates $1 million a year and doesn't really you don't really need to do much anymore. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Right? What are you going to do with your day? And they're like, oh, I'm going to go enjoy my life. I'm like, okay. How many vacations do you need to go on? How many times will it be exciting to go to a different country? How much pleasure to, the cars just start to be the same car and the watches just to be the same watches and the food gets to be the same food and the trips get to be the same, right? Eventually, it's all going to be boring. It's not going to be interesting anymore. That's what, I mean, like, not time and time again, they do research on people that have inherited millions and millions of dollars and never work. Most of them live horrible lives unless they find purpose, right? And so I say, why do you need $1 million? And they say, well, to pay. And then once I push back on that concept and I point it out to them, they say, well, I already really need to make like $100,000 a year. I go, oh, okay. So $100,000 a year. What does that mean for you? And then what do you need to do to go earn that $100,000? And then once you get that $100,000, what will you do next, right? That's the thing people struggle with. They don't know what success means for them. When I started this business, my wife was like, well, what do you need for it to work? I said, I need to make $60,000 a year. We don't have kids. We don't have debt. We save money. I just need to make $60,000 a year. Great. When I made $60,000 a year, it was, okay, now I need to make $150,000 a year. Once I got there, my definition of success changed. Now I want to focus on time. I want to get my time back. And that's what everybody struggles with. They don't know what it means for them to live a successful life. So they constantly looking to other people to tell them what a successful life will be, instead of really giving themselves that space to sit down and ask them that question. Like, what does success look like for me? What would my morning look like? What would my afternoon look like? What would my evening look like? Without being a child. That's the component. Without being a child. Because a child fantasizes about playing all day. Child fantasizes about sleeping, playing video games, hanging out with their friends, sitting on the beach. That's what a child does. An adult, whether you're a man or a woman, fantasizes about providing value. Never met someone who's never said to me in coaching, I want to live a life where I provide value. So they provide value, they nurture and protect the people around them, they do things they wake up and do things, and they lead by example. And so you have to ask yourself what that means to be, so that you are successful and you're still an adult and not a child fantasizing about not doing anything, because that's not living.
One of the exercises I end up giving to quite a few of my clients at certain points of our time together is define your ideal day. Where are you when you wake up in the morning? What are you in the mountains? Are you near a beach? Are you in the home you're living in right now? Do you go out on the back porch and drink a cup of coffee and look at nature? Or do you go into the kitchen and begin cooking a breakfast for your family? What brings you joy? What brings you peace? And go through your day, fleshing it out. What does the environment look like? How do you feel when you do certain things? What foods are you eating? What clothes are you wearing? And that's hard for some people, because some people focus on everybody else to the exclusion of focusing on themselves, right? So they don't really know what brings them joy because they've been on this habitual routine. And they don't even think about anymore, what brings me joy?
I asked the same question. I've learned to add a couple components, because like everyone's like, oh, my ideal day is I wake up and I make breakfast and I hang out with my friend. I say, what does your ideal work day look like? What does your ideal weekend look like? And what does your ideal vacation look like? So this way because I try to push back on it, because I'm getting in coaching, getting a lot of parents call me up now and they're like, hi, you worked with my ex-friend and helped them through this period of your life, and I'm reaching out to you regarding my son. And so I get a lot of that now. And I go, okay, tell me about your son. And they'll start say something like this, like, well, my daughter's 25, 35 years old, and she went to X university, and now she lives in, this town and has this great career. Or my other daughter is, 30 years old, just got married, and, and her husband just bought a house, but my 25 to 35-year-old son is still living in my basement. I don't know what to do. And so that's why I started to push back on and trying to change the narrative a little bit, because I think a lot of people fantasize about not working, especially now the younger kids. It's like they do like research, and they say the average high school kid, when they say, what do you want to do when they grow up? They say they either want to be a social media influencer, or they want to have a Twitch account and be an online gamer. And those are great things to have when you're a kid, but those aren't great dreams for most people when you're an adult. And so that's why I always say, like, what does your ideal workday look like? What does your ideal weekend look like? And what does your ideal vacation look like? And then when they say like their ideal workday is like working for 4 hours, I will say, well, then how can you have this ideal vacation? And how can you have this ideal weekend?
And
so that's why.
What is my ideal business? That's another one that gets thrown in the mix. There's all these things, but because like with you mentioned you're working too many hours. Well, what is your ideal workday, right? So fleshing out, setting boundaries is an important goal. And the other part to this is, once you set a goal and you reach that goal, then what? We are not static people, right? We don't get to here and say, okay, now everything's perfect. It doesn't work that way. Now we're striving for something else. We've got another leg of the journey to go on. So what's the next leg after you've reached the 10-hour workday instead of the 12-hour workday, right? Mm-hmm. What happens when you reach the monetary goal you set for yourself, and you're like looking around saying, is this it? Right?
Then you start a nonprofit.
Yeah. but there's always a next step. We just need to be prepared for when we get to that part of the mountain and say, okay, I hit this goal. Now what? So that's why in business, a lot of times we do like strategic planning. What's my goal for 1 year? What is it for 5 years? What is it for 10 years? Right? So you're always looking towards big picture. How do I want the business to move? I don't want it to go here and be static, typically. Now, sometimes we do, right? It's a side gig. We want to sell 400 t-shirts a month, and that brings us in all the money that we need to do our camping trips or whatever, right? So every person is different. We all have different realities and different perspectives of what we need to feel successful or to live our best life.
No, I agree with you. I started pushing back recently, like in the last 6 months, on goals. I started to kind of like shift out of goals, because I think there's so much material online now on how to set goals, how to set 10-year goals, how to set 5-year goals. And so I found with clients where I'm like, here's this link, here's these links for goals. I'm like, I can work with you on it if you really want me to. And I'll happily kind of map out a 10-year plan, a 5-year plan. I'll happily coach you on it. Like, no problem if that's what you really want. But usually if I do that and I give them like some really good training material, that usually solves that problem. So I can work on other skills like emotional intelligence, empowering habits, self-criticism, fear, worry, do a SWOT with them while they're working on their goals. But rather recently, in the last 6 months, I've started to really try to change the narrative for clients of not setting goals, but setting up systems instead. Because when they set goals like, oh, I have a goal of like going to the gym 3 days a week, or have the goal of losing 40 pounds or 30 pounds, it creates this sort of pressure for them where it's like, I'm defining success on one hand, that's what a goal is, but it's also like I'm defining failure. It's sort of like, you ever get like one of those Aura rings, or like put your like sleep tracking app on your phone and you put it on and you start tracking your sleep patterns. You ever do that?
Not me.
I did that. You know what happened? I got sleep anxiety. I started
Yeah.
stressing out about my sleep patterns, right? Am I doing it well? Am I getting enough sleep? Am I drinking my sleep tea beforehand? And so I stopped doing it because it was stressing me out. And that's the same thing I feel like with a lot of people with goals. It's like, I'm already really stressed. I'm stressed out about the economy. I'm stressed out about my job. I'm stressed about my kids. I'm stressed about my marriage. I'm stressed about the political environment today. I'm stressed about the environment. And so giving me a goal to kind of really like work towards this is adding more pressure to my life. And I have found what really has been working with people is to change the script, right? The definition of emptiness, but Buddhism is the word that we use to define the object is the relationship we have with the object, right? We can take a pen and we can call it a pen, but if we gave it to our cat, they would call it a play toy. If we gave it to our dog, it would be a chew toy. So part of it's changing the relationship with the endeavor. So instead of having it be a goal, which is big and heavy, like a business goal, a financial goal, which creates pressure. So, and it means the same thing. It's systems that are more of a guideline, guardrails, an idea way to live life instead. So I've been kind of shifting that with clients to change that narrative, just like, instead of calling it a budget, we call it a spending plan. And then once we start coming up with systems, then we can set boundaries around the systems, meaning like someone's like, my goal is to lose 30 pounds. I say, okay, well, how you will do that? Be like, we break it down like, oh, I'm going to exercise 3 days a week. And I go, okay, what days? And I go, oh, I'm going to exercise every Monday because that's my best day. I'm most energized. Every Tuesday because I feel really good. And then I'm going to exercise every Saturday because that's the day that I get Saturday mornings for myself. And then my wife gets Sunday mornings for her. So I'm Saturdays. I go, okay. Why don't we change it to, instead of you're going to exercise every Monday, Tuesday, and Saturday, let's change it to a system where every Monday, Tuesday, and Saturday, you're going to instead be like, I'm going to exercise. You're going to instead say, I'm going to get movement. Right? I'm going to define it a little less intense for you so that it takes the pressure off. So that if you wake up on Monday and you're like kind of tired and you had a bad night, and you don't feel so good, but you're not sick, and you don't feel like going to the gym, well, you can still go for a walk. You can still move around, walk around the house. You can still stretch. And then on Tuesday, you go back to the gym. And I found that has more like success with most people than putting in these hard goals that they really struggle with, because it just creates more stress and pressure in their lives.
Well, we're running near the end of our time together, but you mentioned resources. So if we consider you a resource, how do people find you?
So if you just go to my website, elevatelife.project.com, everything's there. Blog posts, coaching videos, audio coaching videos, life purpose quiz, and emotional intelligence quiz. It's all on my website. Just go there.
You're also on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, all those places that everybody likes to hang out.
I try just to focus on Instagram and YouTube. I only have so much time in the day. I love YouTube because YouTube is definitely, it's like search engine optimization. So it really helps with search. But I also find YouTube to be a place where people go for information. So there's a catalog of coaching videos I have there. I think I have like 300 videos there now. So I really like YouTube. And I do Instagram because I run a business. I got to market somewhere.
And that's a really good reason to do that. I don't like social media. It's not my thing.
I hate it.
I do have a presence, not on Instagram, but I do, I do some of the other normal platforms, YouTube and LinkedIn and Facebook and all that.
I tried LinkedIn, but I found like I don't understand it. I feel like when I'm on LinkedIn, I'm like talking to, like, it's like the corporate overlord is like talking to me. I haven't really figured it out. I need to like dive into it. There's only so much I can do in a day.
Yeah, it's geared. different platforms are geared for different audiences, and I think LinkedIn is definitely geared for corporate. It's changing a bit, but heavily skewed towards corporate.
Yeah.
So before we close up here, do you happen to have any final thoughts for our listeners?
I just I tell everybody every day, just wake up and ask yourself this question. Am I living a good life? Where are the areas of growth? What are the things I'm grateful for? And how is my life working right now? It's ask those questions. And if those questions don't resonate with you, just come up with a daily question that you just ask every day. That's going to give you the tools for you to live your own best life. And everybody has a different version. And you have to keep asking that question and keep asking the question. If you're lucky, you'll find the answer, and then I'll be your student.
Cool. Live your best life. I like that. And understanding what that means for you, because we are all so different.
Yeah.
So thanks for being here with me today. I enjoyed
Pleasure.
it. Yeah.
I hope it was good. I mean, it's been, I don't even know what time it's been an hour. So yeah.
Cool. And so for the listeners out there, thank you for listening in again. Every Tuesday we drop a new episode. And I appreciate the fact that you spend your time with me. Thank you so much for that. And for everyone, this is your host, Jean Border, with the Focused Practical Dreamers Journey podcast. Until next time.
We trust you enjoyed this episode of the Focused Practical Dreamers Journey podcast. Energy work to better your business. Hosted by energy healer Jean Border. Remember to visit our website at www.focusedpracticaldreamer.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Focused Practical Dreamers Journey.